With great respect and with great kindness, it's a pleasure to welcome you to Spirit Rock. Welcome to today's monastic Dana Day. This offering is called No, Not Self, Not Taking Ourselves Personally, with our teacher, Ajahn Karunadhammo from the Abhayagiri Monastery in Northern California. This is a hybrid class, and beside me, you can see that we are joining about 150 other Sangha members on the land at Spirit Rock. This class goes from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. Pacific time, and the meal break today will go from 11:30 a.m. to 1 p.m. We are recording this class, and you will get a copy of this recording in about 10 days. To give us a feel for who we're sitting with, I have opened up the chat. Please let us know where you're calling in from. There are many, many countries represented today and many areas of the United States as well with us. My name is Maria Cristina Tavera. I get to be your online host for the day. Write me in the chat if you have any questions or need tech support. I'm happy to respond to you via chat. I do want to acknowledge your generous donations, your dana, your registration fees to Spirit Rock that are deeply appreciated and very much needed at this time. Today's fees are being equally shared with the monks from Abhayagiri Monastery. Your fees keep us being able to offer online and on-land teachings. So thank you for joining us in the Dhamma today. Just quickly, I need to let you know that to keep this meditation hall, our global meditation hall, serene, the mute will be turned off except during meal breaks when you can share. The teacher sound has been optimized, so please check your equipment to make sure that your volume has been increased. And using little headsets do help in amplifying sound. Closed captioning is also on. You can turn it on or off within your Zoom window, depending on what's most comfortable for you. Today, we are taking written questions only. Please chat me with any questions you have. You can either make them public or private, especially during the meal break time. You'll be able to put them publicly. I will copy them and send them to Ajahn Karunadhammo, who will be responding to all the written questions right after the meal break. This will go on till about 12:15 this afternoon, and after that point, we will not be able to take any more questions. Thank you again for joining us, and thank you for your kind attention as we go back to the hall where we will welcome everyone together. Thank you. Enjoy today's offering.
Greetings, friends. Thank you for being here today. My name is Emily, and I give all of you a very warm and deep welcome to be on these springy green lands from the entire family of Spirit Rock. First, I want to acknowledge the volunteers. Thank you to the volunteers. If they can hear me outside, they really make these events happen and support our limited capacity staff to make it all go smoothly for you and for our teachers. And so just a deep acknowledgement of their contribution to our capacity to hold you today. And I also want to give greetings and thanks to the ancestral beings of this land, including the Coast Miwok, whose ancestral home this is and whose in the current contemporary community of the Federated Indians of Great and Rancheria, who we thank for their blessings to be on this land, and just calling in all the present beings and the turkeys and the peahen and the tadpoles and the hawks. And yeah, if you have a chance, please take a moment to connect with the land. It's a really, really beautiful time to be here. And also on behalf of all future beings who may benefit and who may have well-being from your practice here today and in your lives. Thank you. I'm just going to go through some housekeeping arrangements so you feel comfortable. First of all, I'll be in the bookstore office. If you have any needs or requests, you can come and ask me at any point during your time here today. And the restrooms are all the way in the back towards the bookstore, and we have tea and snacks available for sale in the lobby area. Um, as you can already see, and as many of you have already contributed to today's potluck, there will be a blessing before the potluck. So if you're unfamiliar with this practice, we allow the monastics to give a blessing for the food that you've brought, and that they will go through the line first and eat, and then it will be open for the rest of you. Please silence any electronic devices, and better yet, leave them in the cubby hall. And we have facilities week happening, so just be aware of like bigger trucks going through the land and our team running around to make sure that we have everything ready for the next group of people coming in for residential retreats. And otherwise, the campus is pretty wide open for you to explore during your time here. You're welcome to eat pretty much anywhere. It's a beautiful day, so enjoy the outdoors, but we'll also have additional tables in the lobby for you to hang out if you need a cozier place to be, because even though it's sunny, it's still cold. Anything that you leave at the end of the day, if you forget it, it will go into the lost and found, so you can email lostandfound@spiritrock.org, and we'll do our best to get your belongings back to you. And now I'd like to introduce your teacher for today. Ajahn Karunadhammo was born in North Carolina in 1955. He was trained as a nurse and moved to Seattle in his early 20s, where he came in contact with the Theravada tradition. In 1992, he helped out with a monastic visit to the Bay Area and spent 2 months serving a winter retreat at Amaravati Monastery in England. Ajahn Karunadhammo made the decision to ordain while visiting Thailand in 1995. He asked if he could be part of the prospective California monastery, the then unnamed Abhayagiri, and was part of the original group that arrived there on June 1st, 1996. After training for 2 years as an Anagarika and Samanera, he took full bhikkhu ordination in May 1998 with Ajahn Pasano as his preceptor. Since Ajahn Pasano stepped back from his leadership role in 2018, Ajahn Karunadhammo and Ajahn Yaniko guided the Abhayagiri community as co-abbots for 2 years. In June 2020, Ajahn Karunadhammo stepped back from his administrative duties at Abhayagiri and now teaches sometimes at Spirit Rock. Maybe you can tell the rest of the story from there. Yeah, thank you so much for being here and for your community to be here today with us. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, so welcome to everyone, both here on the land, and I hear there's a goodly sized group of people online too. Welcome to all of you there, and hello to Christina, Maria Christina online there, even though I can't see you, I know you're there listening. Anyway, just yeah, welcome, and looking forward to spending a day practicing with all of you. Just a quick encouragement. These are pretty casual days, and people will come and go. But if you can see it in yourselves to make it to the end of the day, there's always little gems and tidbits that unexpectedly come to you if you kind of bear with it until 4:30, even if it looks like the day's not going well and all you want to do is get out and get back home or go to a coffee shop or something like that. Then see if you can push through that a little bit and stay with us until the end of the day. If it doesn't work, that's okay too, but making that intention is always a good thing. So I'll go into a little bit more of the topic of the day, the contemplation about not self. Thought it would be a good theme to bring to the practitioners here. And I'll say a little bit more about it in just a minute, but I think probably before we actually even get started with the theme at hand, maybe we just do a little bit of a settling meditation. It's always good to try and get the mind just a little bit quieter when you start to listen to some of the Buddha's teachings. Is there anyone here who has not done meditation at all? No? Okay, good. So people have a little bit of experience of, a lot of experience. I know some people here are long-term practitioners too, so probably got a range. So yeah, just to start out with, to find a comfortable position where you can sit comfortably for a little while. You don't have to be rigid in practice. It's okay to maintain a position of comfort. If you need to shift every now and then a little bit, that's okay too. Try not to be too restless if you find yourself kind of jittery and moving around a lot, to see if you can kind of calm that down and settle into the body. So finding a position that's kind of a combination of both comfortable and at ease and relaxed, as well as upright and energetic. If we get too relaxed, then it tends to lead to driftiness and drowsiness. If we're too rigid or too tense, then it leads to agitation. So we're looking for that nice balance of both uprightness and alertness without settling into rigidity and tension. So find a moment, take a few moments to just come into your body fully. I generally tend to advise, unless you're extremely well practiced and feel quite comfortable moving right to a subtle object like the breathing, but, and that's fine if you are. But otherwise, for most of us, I think it's useful to not go right to the sensation of breathing if that's your main meditation object, but to settle more broadly for a bit into your whole bodily experience, just recognizing there is this body sitting here in its entirety. So just getting a sense of, from the tip of your head down all the way through to the toes of your feet, this body as a living, breathing, present experience, present moment experience in its entirety. A sense of that. If it helps to do a bit of a scanning through the sensations, that's a very useful way to help focus on the entire body. So you can start with the top of your head and gently move your attention through the forehead, the eyes, around the nose and the jaw, little muscles of the face. Relaxing any tension, uh, consciously just letting it loosen, particularly around the eyes or the cheeks or the jaw. And the shoulders often carry a lot of tension in the shoulders, so just notice if there is any tension there and let it relax. Not to a slump, but with the chest open, allowing the shoulder muscles to drop down around the spine, the upper spine, the neck. And your upper arms and forearms, hands resting in the lap or on the knees. Allow the chest to open, relax. And maybe a little bit of a curve in the lower part of the spine, the back, lower back, to open that up and to allow the belly to open up. And feel the pressure on the cushion that you're sitting on or the chair. Sensations in the thighs, the knees, the lower legs, presence of ankles and feet and toes. And opening up to a broader awareness of the sensation of the entire body as a unit. And if it feels right, to just slowly let your awareness tune into the fact that there's this whole body sitting here, breathing in and out. Don't have to specifically focus on a very narrow spot, but wherever it feels comfortable, wherever it feels at ease, without getting too tight a focus, but not too broad either. You want to keep it contained to the whole body, your attention, awareness around the physical expansion, contraction, in and out breathing in a very soothing kind of way. So just to be with that for just a couple of minutes. So, welcome once again. We have a beautiful day here to start delving in a little bit to the practice, and with the theme that I chose to concentrate on, or to center the day around, the teachings, the Buddha's teachings on not self, anatta, uh, and kind of with the subtitle, not taking ourselves quite so personally. I thought might be good. It's a phrase that Ajahn Sumedho uses in his teaching often. Is like, don't take yourself so personally. And it's a theme or a teaching instruction that the Buddha makes much of in the teachings, the original teachings, the Pali teachings. As part of the three characteristics that he advises us to start to develop some contemplation and insight around, once we develop some calm and ability to settle the mind, then a lot of the practice will center around developing the insight into these three characteristics of anicca, dukkha, anatta, impermanence, suffering, not self, or instability, if you will, for anicca, or unsatisfactoriness may be a better word than suffering for dukkha, and then not self, anatta. And as we slowly develop insight into these three characteristics, we come to see with more clarity the way the world works, and the way that we inadvertently create a lot of suffering for ourselves, and how we can let that start to unwind, unravel a bit. And I've always found the teachings, particularly for myself, around not self, as particularly motivating, interesting, a way to engage with the practice in a very practical way. As a way of addressing, I think, I mean, it's a problem of the human, the human rebirth, the human birth that is worldwide, but particularly, I think, noticeable in the West, where we have a regular and reliable sense of security in the material world. We have high standard of living here. We have all the requisites for the most part that we need, at least most of us do. There's, of course, many people, even here in the States, who don't have the basic requisites for living: food, clothing, shelter. But probably most of us in this room do, and are used to a relatively comfortable life. And what seems to have emerged in many different ways is kind of a focusing on, and I find it true, and particularly in meditation circles, this kind of endless quest for self-improvement. That's kind of a theme that we all probably experience from the media, from the various kinds of spiritual teachings, or psychological teachings that are out there, is this quest for improving myself, being better than I am. And it just runs the whole gamut of experience, the body and the mind, in thinking about it, even just in terms of our physical bodies. We have pretty good resources and access to healthy food, to um, good medical care, and we fitness kinds of activities. And there's a fairly strong cultural emphasis on things like physical appearance, being attractive, how we present ourselves to the world. So there's a very strong focus, sometimes with a lot of pressure in society to constantly improve our appearance, our health, our strength through all the beliefs that we have and that we can generate around diet. If you want to get a variety of opinions, probably if there's 120 people in this room, there's probably 120 different ideas of what's healthy for us. And kind of living our lives around developing that perfect health, perfect fitness, perfect diet, beautiful appearance. And we can spend a lot of time getting involved with that. And wrapped up in that whole quest is a very strong sense of identity with the body. Um, and it's this kind of a sense of this body as being who I am, or as something that I should have. There is a me that should have some control over it, or that has some that has ultimate ability to make it the best thing possible in all circumstances. And even if we don't carry that belief around with us consciously, we operate from that on a unconscious level. Um, just this kind of sense of me. This is me. Of course, it's me. Um, and that we spend a lot of time kind of trying to avoid some of the obvious things, that this body gets sick, even though we don't want it to. The body tends to age, as many of us are starting to experience. Um, and eventually it will pass away. This body is not forever. So it's something that, there's a growing recognition that we need to pay attention to these things. But there's still a lot of societal denial around all of these aspects of being a human being, the natural part of old age, sickness, death. Um, uh, and we tend to not want to look at that because it's challenging to our sense of who we are. If we identify with this body as who we are, or as something that we possess, then all of these little reminders are kind of interfering with that perception, and that can be very unsettling and very unstabilizing. So we do what we can to avoid really looking at that, even if we can say to ourselves and say to other people, oh yes, of course, everything changes and it's always moving in one direction. And yes, we recognize that we're going to pass away at some point. There can be this kind of intellectual knowledge, but as long as there's this kind of identity with the body in any way whatsoever, we're going to fall into the trap of trying to preserve it. Because if we even have a subtle sense of this is who we are, or this is ours to control, then the fear, the anxiety that goes with seeing that, really truly seeing that it's actually not the case, is going to be unsettling, and we try and divert ourselves from attending to that or noticing that, fully accepting that. So this is the problem. And then we do that, not just this identification, either on a gross level or a subtle level, isn't just with the body. And sometimes it's even stronger with the various aspects of what we call the mind. Um, and the mind being more or less roughly defined as the many of you are familiar with the Buddha's 5 aggregates, the 5 khandhas. The mind aspect being those feelings that we have, the perceptions, the thoughts, mental formations, and consciousness itself, this conscious awareness of sights and sounds and tastes and tactile sensations and smells and all the things of the bodily sensory base, and also the intellect itself. So the awareness that's associated with those. Any one of those we can and do form a sense of this sense of self around. And so, particularly in the realm of psychology and Western psychology, oftentimes it's easy to fall into that same trap of trying to find perfection in our minds as well as our bodies, and maybe even more so because of our bodies. We can maintain, like I was saying, a relative sense of comfort for many of us, but then we have to deal with all of these negative thoughts, the societal pressure to not only be attractive physically, but to have a sparkling personality that that everybody appreciates in our quest for being approved of and have good friends and have people see us in a good light, have a good reputation, um, and and most of all to be happy all the time. So if we get caught in that as an ideal, then when it doesn't happen, or when something comes that uh, takes those experiences away from us and kind of shows us that maybe we don't have as much control over these thought patterns, these emotional responses, this conditioning that we all come into the world with from who knows whatever. I have the perspective, appreciative, infinite past lives where I've been grinding these habits into my mind stream for an incalculable amount of time. But even if even if your perspective is just this one lifetime, the conditioning is very strong to identify with these patterns and to feel like there shouldn't be any negative ones, and that the best thing that one can do with one's life is to, cleanse oneself of any kind of mental obstructions and habits, and never have any negative thoughts. Never, particularly in the Buddhist world, sort of like the big goal is to be, loving kindness and compassion and equanimity at all times. And that is the kind of person that we are striving to be. And we can get caught up in that and how to develop that. And then when, an old habit or an old pattern kind of comes and all of a sudden, this kind, compassionate, equanimous being rises up with a feeling of anger or irritability or anxiety or fear, we think, oh, something's wrong. It shouldn't be this way. And I need to do something to improve myself or get rid of it or deal with it. So, it's this endless quest for self-improvement. What else to say? How else to say it? That catches us. So, and we can spend a lot of time spinning our wheels around that and then end up creating a lot more suffering for ourselves through this kind of constant comparison to other people, which is another form of self. There's a lot of different layers of this perception of self. And I call self a perception. This sense of self is a perception that we have. And it's very, very deeply ingrained. It's kind of like the background programming of our conscious existence, is this perception of self. And so, the Buddha offers a very unique solution in basically in Buddhism. The Buddha made this development or the recognition of this perception a paramount part of the teachings, and how to let that unravel, how to let that perception start to unravel a bit. And that's kind of unique to the Buddha's teachings. And other teachings will point to that in some direction, but the Buddha really kind of made it one of the central themes of his teaching, pointing to that self-identification on both fairly coarse levels and very, very refined levels as being a central obstruction in seeing clearly the way that the world works. So he established a teaching, many teachings actually, to establish a different perception, a perception of not self, which is also a form of perception. And it's really good to understand. I think a lot of us come to that particular aspect of the teaching and pick it up because it's presented as kind of a doctrinal position, like there is no self. Oftentimes you'll hear anatta referred to as no self. There is no self. And the Buddha didn't really phrase it in that way, or we've translated it into phrasing it in that way. There is no self, and even I'm embarrassed to say, even in our chanting, morning chanting, there's one way that it's translated as there is no self in the created or the uncreated. For those of you who are familiar with our morning chanting, and it's a bad translation. And I wish that it would get undone, but even the person who originally translated it that way many, many years ago realized that it wasn't a good translation, but he couldn't convince the committee to change it to something more like, all conditions are not self, which is a more accurate translation. And so if you hear there is no self, the Buddha never really said it in that way. And he pointed more towards this whole teaching as more of a contemplative strategy. And that's, if you don't get anything, don't take away anything today other than this particular, concept. I think it's just really important to realize that we're not trying to establish a metaphysical doctrine that there is no self and that it is our duty to try and realize that. But to more think of it as a contemplative strategy, that there's contemplations that we can do as part of our meditation and daily reflections that lead us into an experience or an understanding of that kind of perception. So we're trying to deconstruct, in a sense, this perception of self and allow the perception of not self to start to manifest and rise up in our understanding and in our experience. I think maybe what to there's a number of teachings. Those of you who are familiar with the Pali Canon, and have done a fair amount of exploration of that, know that this theme constantly arises in many different ways and different approaches. And I thought I'd just to tune us into the original Buddha's teachings, maybe just read a little bit from one of the core initial teachings along this line, just so you get a hint or a flavor of the Buddha's own words as he taught them. And the very first approach that he made with this was in a teaching just within a few months after his enlightenment, when he was just starting to teach the ascetic wanderers that were gathering around him, just small numbers of people in the beginning. And of course, as probably most of you know, the first teaching he gave was the Dhammacakka Sutta, the teaching on setting the wheel in motion of the Dhamma, where he expounded the Four Noble Truths, the basic core of the Buddha's teaching around the Four Noble Truths. But then the second major discourse that he gave within some months of his enlightenment was what we now call the Anattalakkana Sutta, or the teachings on the characteristic of not self. And he gave this to a group of monks who were gathering around him. and there were 5 ascetics that he had spent time with before his enlightenment that he now, after his enlightenment, was in the process of teaching. And it's where he introduces these 3 characteristics of anicca, dukkha, anatta. So it's a lovely teaching, one of the most quintessential teachings of the Buddha. And if you want to refer back to it, you can always go online to our chanting book, and it's in volume 2 on page 14. Is this whole sutta, which we chant regularly at the monastery, both in Pali and in English as well. So it's not very long, and I'm not going to read the whole thing, but just to give a sense of the flow of the language. So to just sit quietly while I read this and kind of just take it in. Thus have I heard, at one time, the Blessed One was dwelling at Benares in the deer park. There he addressed the group of 5 bhikkhus. Form, bhikkhus, is not self, and form referring to the body in this particular sense. If bhikkhus, form were self, then form would not lead to affliction, and one might be able to say in regard to form, let my form be thus, let my form not be thus. But since bhikkhus, form is not self, form therefore leads to affliction, and one is not able to say in regard to form, let my form be thus, let my form not be thus. And then if you're not familiar with the 5 khandhas, he goes through each of the 5 khandhas in the same formula. So starting with the second one, Vedana, or feeling tone. Feeling is not self. If bhikkhus, feeling were self, feeling would not lead to affliction. And one might be able to say in regard to feeling, let my feeling be thus, let my feeling not be thus. But since bhikkhus, feeling is not self, feeling therefore leads to affliction. And one is not able to say in regard to feeling, let my feeling be thus, let my feeling not be thus. Perception is not self. If bhikkhus' perception were self, perception would not lead to affliction. And one might be able to say in regard to perception, let my perception be thus, let my perception not be thus. But since bhikkhus' perception is not self, perception therefore leads to affliction. And one is not able to say in regard to perception, let my perception be thus, let my perception not be thus. Mental formations are not self. Most often we experience this in the realm of thoughts, emotions. Mental formations are not self. If bhikkhus' mental formations were self, mental formations would not lead to affliction. And one might be able to say in regard to mental formations, let my mental formations be thus, let my mental formations not be thus. But since bhikkhus' mental formations are not self, mental formations therefore lead to affliction. And one is not able to say, in regard to mental formations, let my mental formations be thus, let my mental formations not be thus. Consciousness is not self. If bhikkhus' consciousness were self, consciousness would not lead to affliction. And one might be able to say in regard to consciousness, let my consciousness be thus, let my consciousness not be thus. But since bhikkhus' consciousness is not self, consciousness therefore leads to affliction, and one is not able to say in regard to consciousness, let my consciousness be thus, let my consciousness not be thus. So he's gone through in this first section of going through all the 5 aggregates, the 5 aggregates being the body, aspects of body and mind that we generally tend to regard as who I am, or some combination, either individually or in some combination. You know, I'm this body, or this body is mine. Same with feeling, tone, pleasant, unpleasant feelings that we get, perceptions, memories, you know, the kind of patterns of mental activity that we engage in, active thoughts, mental formations, the thinking process itself and the construction of these patterns. And then consciousness, this basic awareness that we experience through the six sense bases, the five physical senses and the mind, the intellect. So that he's talking about the sense of control that we want to try and keep and that we feel like we should be able to have in relation to these individual aggregates or as a combination, and that constant quest for the sense of control, organization, predictability, security that we constantly find ourselves moving through is what generates this sense of self, and the fact that ultimately, and this is the hard part, we don't have the control. And that starting to let go of that sense of control is very important. And it doesn't mean that we abdicate all responsibility for our experience. And we still have to learn how to be skillfully responding to all of the things that come into our body and our mind in a way that doesn't create suffering. But the less we identify with it and realize that's who we are, and to realize that there is a modicum of control over some of these things and how we respond, but that they're not ultimately under our control. That is a key to a very profound level of happiness that the Buddha has taught us we can have access to. So control being a big issue. And then he goes on to another part, which I'll just go over also, it gives it a little bit broader perspective and brings the teachings on impermanence and dukkha, unsatisfactoriness, into the mix. What do you think about this, bhikkhus? Is form, the body, permanent or impermanent? Impermanent, Venerable Sir. But is that which is impermanent painful or pleasurable? Or probably better translated as satisfactory or unsatisfactory. Painful or unsatisfactory, Venerable Sir. But is it fit to consider that which is impermanent, unsatisfactory, of a nature to change, as this is mine, I am this is myself? It is not, Venerable Sir. What do you think about this, bhikkhus? Is feeling permanent or impermanent? Impermanent, Venerable Sir. But is that which is impermanent satisfactory or unsatisfactory? Unsatisfactory, Venerable Sir. But is it fit to consider that which is impermanent, unsatisfactory, of a nature to change, as this is mine, I am this is myself? It is not, Venerable Sir. What do you think about this, bhikkhus? Is perception, memory, patterns, permanent or impermanent? Impermanent, Venerable Sir. But is that which is impermanent unsatisfactory or satisfactory? Unsatisfactory, Venerable Sir. But is it fit to consider that which is impermanent, unsatisfactory, of a nature to change, as this is mine, I am this is myself? It is not, Venerable Sir. Same with mental formations, thoughts, emotions. Same with consciousness. Is it permanent or impermanent? It is impermanent. It is unsatisfactory, and it is not fit to consider that to be this is mine, I am this, and this is myself. So those are the first two sections of this particular teaching, and the third goes on to kind of summarize the whole thing, which I won't read right now. But so you get the idea that if you were listening carefully to those words, this is not a teaching that says there is no self. It's a teaching that's kind of taking the instruction kind of on a bit-by-bit basis of what it is that we think we are, who it is that we think we are, one by one, little by little, examining it and seeing if that's true. Can we point to anything within the body or the feelings or the perceptions or the patterns or the thoughts or even the level of conscious awareness that isn't, can we find any sense of stability, unchangeability, ultimate satisfaction, or identity with this, any of these individually? And that's the contemplative strategy. And then so it's a process of deconstruction rather than trying to construct a new set of beliefs or a new set of ideas or a theoretical, standpoint to adhere to. It's a process of contemplating what it is that we think we are or who we think we are, little bit by little bit, and realizing that our assumptions have been based on a false reality. So today, what I'd like to do, I tend to kind of teach oftentimes more along the lines of guided meditations. There's a number of different ways that we can construct our contemplations to kind of bring up themes that center around this contemplative strategy. So rather than talk a whole lot about theoretical ideas, I'd like to offer, when we have some of our sitting meditation sessions, just some themes to reflect on and ways to reflect on it that you can pick up and use whatever feels useful and take home with you as part of your regular meditation practice. So it's not to come away with a new belief system or a new conceptual understanding, although that's not a bad place to begin a little bit, but to bring, to take away maybe, a little bit of a strategy about how to contemplate this that then actually turns into a real understanding rather than just an intellectual understanding, but a real deeper insight. And this comes in small bits and stages. It's not for most people anyway, it's not a whiz bang, sudden understanding. This is a gradual process of self-effacement. I like to kind of just driving home this basic point of it being a contemplative strategy. I often reflect on a time, it was probably about 10, 15 years, more like 15 years ago. I was staying at our hermitage 10 years ago, probably, up in Washington State. We have a small hermitage on the Columbia River in eastern Washington, south part of eastern Washington. And we were invited, myself and Ajahn Sudana were invited to spend some time with a religion class in the community college, a small community college nearby in Oregon. And one of the teachings that they were studying were teachings of the Buddha. So these were very young college-age students, probably in their late teens, early 20s. Very bright and inquisitive, and had done some reading on the Buddha's teachings, including the teaching on not self, and we're trying to understand that a little bit more. And there was one woman who was particularly astute and really trying to get a sense of where it was pointing. And we talked about it similarly to what I talked about just briefly this morning. And she was quite thoughtful, and she said, so if I understand this right, is what we're doing is we're contemplating what it is that we think we are, who we think we are, one by one, and we're kind of disbanding that, letting that go. And after we do that, and we do that through all of the 5 aggregates that we usually assume as ourselves, after we deconstruct that sense of who we are in relation to the body and the mind, and really are able to let go of that, then what happens is that we understand who we really are. And I said, well, you're almost there. And I said, what you're doing is that you are contemplating these 5 aggregates and you're realizing that that's not who I am, this isn't who I am, that's not who I am. And the understanding that arises is who you really aren't, who you really are not. And you leave it there. You don't take it to, okay, well, then I'll know who I really am. You just stop right before you get to that particular thought or that notion. So what we're doing is trying to discover who we really are not. And then the rest becomes apparent. The understanding becomes apparent. And as the Buddha says, I really teach only 2 things, suffering and the end of suffering. So by realizing who we are not and really getting that over time as a deep understanding is our key, our tool to realizing the end of suffering with the lack of identification. And then we don't have to worry about finding out who we really are. We don't have to discover ourselves. You know. Make sense? The potential is for an incredible amount of freedom once we get there. So just as a little bit of a break, I thought maybe before coming back for the first guided meditation along these lines, and I've got maybe we'll see how it works, and I'll try to be open and flexible throughout the day, but got about 3 different kinds of guided meditations to offer, one this morning and a couple this afternoon that are kind of different approaches to this contemplative strategy. And I thought we'd just have an opportunity to do maybe a half an hour of walking meditation just to stretch the body and kind of keep settling into the body. But first, I also want to mention, we didn't mention it first off in the announcements, there's going to be an opportunity for questions and answers today. I tend to prefer that they be in a written form. So there's a little table on a pedestal back there with pieces of paper and pencils and pens. So that if you have a question that comes to your mind this morning or during the first part of the meal break, just write it down and put it into the basket. And we'll use that as a starting point. And I think the people online will have the opportunity to submit questions to, which will somehow get to me magically through the ether. And then I'll be gathering those up probably halfway through the meal break. And then right after the meal break, we'll have a chance to read out some of those questions and answer and do some answering around that. So we'll do that after the meal break, and then go into more of a practice after that. So just to let you know that. So for right now, people, if people want to keep sitting in here, that's fine. If you would like to go out and maybe do some walking meditation, that would be fine too. Stretch the body and but try and really maintain the quiet, the solitude of mind, not get dispersed out into conversation or browsing around. Just try and throughout the day as much as possible, maybe with a bit of an exception at the mealtime, just to try and keep a contemplative attitude and not get too drawn out into the world around us. That helps in developing understanding around these things. So my suggestion, find a place somewhere outside where you can just have a short walking path, in a sense, kind of a makeshift walking path where you can just walk back and forth, maybe 20 paces or 25 paces back and forth. Slow, normal pace. It doesn't have to be the kind of super slow, lift, push, step kind of walking meditation. Just more of a natural pace, but a little bit contained, and keeping the gaze not wandering around too much, and just to feel the body. Feel the body in its entirety, soles of the feet hitting the ground, but also not neglecting an attention to the rest of the body, the upper body and the head and the arms moving. And just try and help the mind settle with that. And if you want to also, just kind of introducing just the basic, contemplation of, is this who I am? Yeah. And then just to come back here, maybe regather for this morning's guided meditation starting at 10:30. So if somebody could ring a bell, this outside bell, about 5 minutes or so before that, 10:25, that would be useful to remind people to come in. Okay? Okay. Okay, so coming back do a period of sitting meditation. And do a little bit of contemplation of the body, around the body. In the Thai forest tradition, there is a large amount of emphasis placed on contemplation of the body. Yeah, as many people are aware, in the four foundations of mindfulness, there's focus on the body, feelings, the mind itself, and certain mental qualities or contemplations as the four establishings of mindfulness, where we establish our mindfulness around. And the body is uh, one of the most uh, essential, important places to uh, focus our attention. It's made much of in our tradition. The body is right here and now in the present moment. And it can, we have a lot of assumptions about it, and it's also a place where we can understand and realize a lot of freedom once we understand this body very carefully and our assumptions around it. So, for this period of meditation, to sit quietly again, establish that sense of grounded presence in this whole body. It doesn't mean that thoughts, feelings, doesn't mean that those aren't going to arise, and that we won't kind of get lost in them a little bit here and there, or a lot. But to keep returning, focusing on this full awareness of the entire body. Not to annihilate thinking, but to just let it start to settle down and be less distracting. We can still be present, but we don't have to turn our full attention to the stories and the thought processes. If we can remain just aware of the presence of this body sitting here. So take a few moments, ground ourselves in the sensations of the body from the tip of the head down to the soles of the feet, and maybe um, up and down a couple of times to just get a full sense of this body and the gentle quality of breathing, just to bring a little bit of settledness into the heart, the mind right now. So I'd like to introduce a contemplative strategy that one can pick up as a part of meditation. A lot of the meditation that we practice is towards the settling of the mind, settling of the body, samatha practice. And that's very important. It gives us a sense of ease and perspective and well-being too, that keeps us going in the meditation practice. And there's also the more active forms of contemplative practice. And this contemplation of the body in relation to the teachings of anatta, not self, is one of those. The more that our mind settles down through just peaceful contemplation of a theme like the breathing, then the clearer one will see the more investigative contemplations, the more one will actually bring it to the level of experience rather than just concept, which is what our aim is. So just to constantly renew, refresh this sense of presence, awareness of the body, not trying to pin the breathing down and focus extremely narrowly, but to stay with an overall theme of this whole body and its various manifestations, including the breathing. Keep returning to that as we need to settle the mind. And then to slowly consider the aspect of what we were talking about earlier, the uncontrollability, the sense that the perception that we don't have an ultimate control over the disposition of this body, how it operates, modicum of influence that we can put towards it, but not any sense of ultimate control. One way of doing that, which I find is very soothing and insightful and useful over and over and over again, is to, in this period of meditation, establish an intention right now to stay as absolutely still as you possibly can. Basically, establish that intention, establish that willfulness that the body will not move. That's what you are instructing the body. Do not move. Stay perfectly still. Having established that intention, step back just a step from the body itself and see if you can observe the body from a slight distance. The Buddha would phrase that as if you were watching another person who is sleeping. You're standing beside a sleeping person and watching them breathe or move or whatever they do during their sleep. Establish that kind of perspective of watching your own body right now. And you're saying, don't move. And focus your attention around the head and face. Notice any sensations or slight twitching or movements around the eyes. In the mouth. And the muscles of the face. Things like swallowing, any kind of secretions that arise in the mouth, the saliva, clearing of the throat when it gathers a little bit of mucus. Is that face? Is that body up there? Is that obeying your intention to not move? Just notice again, the face is a very good place to notice these very fine movements of muscles. Notice those fine movements, almost involuntary twitches and shiftings of the whole body, hands and arms, and body's always just constantly, slightly moving to adjust itself to a more almost imperceptibly comfortable, more comfortable position. And step back and watch that happen. Mm, attend to the in and out breathing. You can feel the urge to arise, to breathe in. Belly expands, lungs open, pull in air. When it reaches its peak inhalation, then it relaxes. The air moves out. The abdomen settles back. The lungs empty out. As soon as it reaches the end of that cycle, another in-breath picks up, the muscles expand. over and over again. You can try a little experiment. Tell the body, if you're in charge, you should be able to tell the body, stop breathing. See how long you can hold your breath. Not to the point of discomfort or passing out, but just try it. Hold your breath. And then watch the body take over. It's not obeying your command. It has its own way of operating. See if you can feel the digestive process, stomach maybe slightly gurgling or the intestines moving inside. Again, those subtle twitchings in the face, the swallowing of saliva. The breathing in and out. As if you're watching from outside. Occasionally, the body wants to take a big breath. Watch when that happens. If the mind and body are relatively still, see if you can feel the rhythm of the heart under the chest bone, or the pulse in various parts of the body. Any control over that? Can you tell the heart to stop beating? If the thinking mind has been activated in any way, and you find yourself moving into the territory of concepts and getting lost in stories, that's okay. And just notice that. And see if you can gently steer the attention, not trying to annihilate the thoughts, but just gently redirect the attention to the gentle, rhythmic quality of in and out breathing, or just the mere knowing of this full bodily presence. Thinking can, thinking can just go on its own way as well. Just let it be and steer the attention back to the breathing and the body to settle. Once the awareness is back to feeling a bit more settled within the body, and take another look at this involuntary nature of the muscles twitching, the automatic functions of the body happening, the breathing, the heart. Stepping back like you're watching a sleeping body, and watch that in yourself. Very acutely aware and attuned to these minute movements. So gently back and forth, settling, calming, soothing, and observing and watching. Let's continue that process for 15, 20 minutes. And the body has its own innate intelligence, a form of its own intelligence. It does what it needs to do to maintain its stability, its stasis, homeostasis. Does it when we're awake, it does it when we're asleep, it does it when we're not even aware of having a body. Thoughts have a life of their own too. And they may be intruding a bit to draw your attention, but for now, let the thoughts be the thoughts. Keep returning to the body and getting to know its own innate intelligence, basic form of intelligence, taking care of its needs. So this is one form of a strategy that you can take to start to understand a little bit about the nature of the body and its way of being in the world, and how much control we actually do have over it, how much of it is the body just doing what a body does. Um, we tweak it a little bit, we influence it a little bit, our intentions drive it in a certain direction, and it follows its own laws of nature. And we can step back and watch that happen. Can do it in all postures, can do it when we're walking, when we're lying down, when we're standing, and of course when we're sitting. That's what mindfulness is bringing to mind this body uh, and its movements, its processes, its own intelligence. That's our mindfulness practice in relation to the body. Can even do it while we're engaging with conversations, eating, all the natural functions of the body, just stepping back, watching it happen. So this afternoon, we'll have some more opportunity for that. And if you have any questions about this so far, go ahead and write them down. I'll pick them up probably around 12:15 or so you can get a little bit of time to look through them. And we'll have a meal break here until 1 o'clock. And so for those of you who haven't been here before, there's a little routine that we go through first. If you have brought some food to share, and if it needs any tweaking or preparation, just after I finish talking right here, it would be time to go out to the table and do that right away. And then maybe I'd ask Shraddha, where are you there, and Kiran maybe, to kind of just help people arrange the food on the tables. That would be very helpful. And then we have a formal food offering process. If people would like to offer what they brought to the monastics, that's great. If you want somebody else to offer it, that's great too. It doesn't matter a whole lot. Either way works. And maybe Shraddha and Kiran can just make sure that process gets established. And then the monastics, we will go and get our bowls ready to bring down, and then maybe Ajahn Titapanyo and Tanobasi can, once the food is ready to be received, can receive the food. Basically, people who want to offer just need to hand one dish at a time over to the monks, and then the monks will receive that into their hands and put it back down on the table. And then once all the food is offered, once all the dishes have been offered, then we'll go through the line with our bowls, take what we need, and then it's up to everybody else to help themselves. We'll chant a blessing after we receive our food in our bowls. We'll stand there and offer a blessing of appreciation for the generosity of the food offering. And then to just enjoy the meal and the time with each other. And make sure afterwards that all the food disappears. So if you'd like to take home what's left over from your own offering, or if there's other stuff that seems to be not being picked up, feel free to take some of that home too. I think Spirit Rock would probably really appreciate not having to deal with any leftover food, and try and make things neat and tidy, clean up, so that we leave it nice for them. And then plan to gather around back here around 1 o'clock for the questions and answers in the rest of the afternoon. Sound good? Any questions on that? Okay. All right, we shall go. Is that a question or a, no, okay.